You're listening to
They're gonna call it a hard foul. They're gonna call it a hard foul.
offering in-depth analysis on all things Boston Celtics with your hosts, Jim and Mike Quigley.
Offensive rebound. Almost poked away. Hauser, corner three. In and out. Brown, our offensive rebound. Puts it up and in. This season, the former Pacers played 3 years in Indianapolis. Brown kicks it out. Good ball moving. White gets a clean look. Three-pointer. Shot's good. Everybody.
It's 2-0. The Celtics finally get a win on game 2 against the Pacers last night. And Mike, the top of this pod, I'm not going to play it here right now for us live, but on the top of this pod, there's going to be 2 plays, back-to-back offensive plays that I think just personified this game. It was early, I'm not sure if it was first quarter, late second quarter, where the Celtics had just multiple offensive rebound crashes. One led to Hauser missed 3 attempt from the corner, and then Jaylen Brown finally got the second or third offensive rebound and got the putback. At that point in the game, the Celtics were not shooting the ball well. This was early in the second quarter. They were not shooting the ball well, but they were fighting on both ends from about the 7-minute mark in the first quarter to that point. The second play was a Brown transition, either a possession or 2 after this happened, where he went to the basket, kicked it to the corner. The ball touched White, Hauser, and eventually, Holiday White, eventually got to White's hands, and he hit a 3 from the foul line extender. Holiday, Hauser, White, it went, I believe. So it was a great push, a great swing. And they hit the 3, and I just felt like they pushed the ball all game long. They played hard all game long. There were spurts in this game where Indiana, gave him some scare and gave him some trouble. But the bottom line is, I thought, Mike, this is where I was trying to go with it before I fumbled all over myself, is I thought this was their most impressive win of the playoffs. And I'll hand it over to you from there.
Jimmy, you're trying to be LeBron James at the podium, remembering every play of the game, and you screwed that up.
And I just watched it 2 seconds ago. So it shows you how well my memory is.
Listen, man, not all of us can read Mockingbird books on TV for everybody to see and then remember every aspect of the game like the brilliant LeBron James, okay?
Yeah, when he's on
not all of us
5.
have that talent.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, like in the first half, there were probably like 8 out of 9 guys trying really hard on the Celtics, and one guy who looked like he was on vacation. In the second half, they were all working hard. Yeah, in the second half, they were all working hard. I think I was texting you. It's impressive that the Celtics are up at 6 at halftime when it's 6-on-4. Jason Tatum was the best player on the Pacers. It was a great game because the Celtics brought the intensity on defense. They went on a 20-0 run in the second half, and then Indiana, I just got to give a lot of credit to Pascal Siakam and the other bigs on the Pacers. Over 2 games now, they've all played really well.
Well, Miles Turner was a no-show yesterday, complete with no-show yesterday.
Yeah, but I mean, the shooting is just super efficient across the board with those bigs. And they got the Pacers back in the game, specifically, obviously, Pascal. And so I was nervous at halftime because the Celtics didn't close that quarter, similar to game 1. And I was thinking to myself, well, they can't pull this one out like game 1. They have to come out with that defensive intensity again the second half, and they did. And it wasn't just the starters with the defense. I thought we saw really great defensive effort from O'Shea Brissett when Cornette went down. And Sam Hauser's offense is still not here, but I thought Hauser's defense was much better. So across the board, for me, the offense is the offense, but I think the story of the Celtics all season has been when the defense is showing up and the effort plays are there, everything else kind of comes together. And I felt like that's what we saw last night was really the best of Boston in the second half with just real defensive intensity, as you mentioned, crashing the glass, really on both ends of the floor. I feel like there were moments where Indiana beat them up on the offensive glass, but for the most part, the Celtics controlled the glass, controlled the style of play as far as physicality. I thought the Celtics brought it. And Jason Tatum showed up in the second half. He was a different player, and obviously that made a big difference too. And if this series ended today, Jim, Jaylen Brown, 40-point effort. I want to say maybe 28 to 30 the night before with the biggest shot of the season.
And great defense. And great defense.
And great defense. Yeah, so you're talking about MVP of the series, obviously. Yeah, it's a big win because going back to Indiana 1-1 just felt like it would have been tougher than the other series. And being up 2-0, it feels like the Celtics can come back to Boston 3-1. I feel really good about that.
Well, so Indiana had more turnovers in game one. I think they had 24. They had 16 last night. But
It's a shit ton of turnovers.
I felt like the Celtics forced more of the turnovers.
Yep.
I felt like their ball pressure was just much better. I mean, Indiana still shot 54%. The thing about Indiana is you can play 20 seconds of great offense, and they just do drive and kick and drive and kick and drive and kick until they can get the shot that they want against you. But they're young, and they can't always sustain that possession to possession to possession. So you do have the ability to cause turnovers if you play hard. And I thought the Celtics caused a bunch of those turnovers last night and did a really good job getting up in their shirts. The one, credit to Joe Mazzulla with the change he made. You saw it from the outset. They didn't start Horford on Turner. They actually, I think it was either Tatum or Brown. They started off on Turner, and Horford went on to Siakam. Now Siakam had a big night, but Indiana was not able to really hammer them with the drop coverage and take advantage of the Celtics switches because Siakam isn't as much of a threat from the 3-point line as Turner is. He can hit him from out there, but Turner is really not a guy that's gonna. I mean, Turner's more of a guy that's gonna live out on three. Siakam wants to get to his mid range. Al can contest that. And make life a little bit more difficult, and they'll live with Indiana settling for Pascal Siakam's mid-range game. They just will, even if he shoots it at a clip as he did last night, knowing that they can keep the pressure on these guards and not have to worry about that switch as much as that they have with Turner. So that was a great adjustment. The other adjustment they made is with McConnell, they put their big on him, knowing, that he's not really an outside shooting threat. So they either had a forward or they had their center on McConnell, and they just dropped off him. Now, he hit that 1-3. But outside of that, he was really pretty much a non-factor in that game with his penetration. When he tried to penetrate, there were not really openings there. There weren't passing lanes because the size he had to match up with on his drive. So they really countered Indiana well to start the game with what they did defensively and the changes they made. And kudos to the coaching staff for coming up with that. I thought Indiana struggled with that. And I thought the Celtics took advantage of it. I look at this game and I try to project the rest of the series, and this may come back to Boston for a game 5. Because Indiana is so good at home, and I think it probably will. But if the Celtics play with this type of physicality and they play with this type of intensity and they hit the glass like they did, this should still be a short series. It should go no more than 5. They really do have a chance to sweep these guys. And the other thing I think they did unlock, Mike, and this kind of happened by accident because unfortunately Luke Cornett got hurt, and the fact that he didn't come out of the locker room at all, I don't think is a great sign. Siakam whacked him pretty hard on a pass attempt that led to a turnover early in the second quarter. They went small, and O'Shea Brissett really brought some energy for them. He continued to rebound the ball well, as he always does, and they were able to deal with Indiana's constant motion on offense a little bit better than they had been with Cornett not being out there. And I think you can do that against Indiana because the backup bigs are not huge. They're pretty athletic, but they're not huge, and then they're not going to kill you. And even Miles Turner isn't your typical big that I think is going to look to post you up and try to take advantage of you that way. I mean, maybe they try more of that after seeing what the Celtics did in Game 3, and I think the Celtics would be fine with that if they decide to do that. So, couple of just really nice decisions by Missoula. One was obviously a planned decision going into the game with how they attacked Indiana defensively. The other one was kind of an opportunity when Cornette went down and Brissett came in, and we talked about that on the pod the other day about how Brissett could be a guy to play in this series. So I look at this game and I think let's talk about Tatum some more, and I'll give that over to you. But I was just really pleased. I was pleased with the effort. I was pleased how they came out. And you and I would text them back and forth early, late in that first quarter that they were the better team. They just weren't making shots. And all of a sudden they started making shots and the game was essentially over.
Jim, I would fully expect the Celtics coming off a blowout in Game 3 that they're not going to show up. And that's why this series will go at least 5. But we'll see. Maybe they'll bring the same intensity as they brought in Game 2. And it's nice to see the Celtics win a Game 2, right? How about that?
I know, it hasn't happened.
When's the last time the Celtics were up 2-0 in the series? I think it was the Atlanta Hawks, right? Is that the last time?
I guess so. I thought it was before them, but you corrected me. Yeah, I guess it was the Hawks last year.
So it's not often that the Celtics have been road warriors, and it almost feels like Tatum is more comfortable playing on the road than at home in the playoffs. So maybe his shooting numbers will go up in Indiana. I mean, Tatum just let his shooting impact the rest of his game. And I'm not a huge fan of Doris Burke, but I think she was correct. His body language wasn't good.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't defending at a high level. He wasn't involved in the first half. He only had 2 rebounds, which all playoffs he's had a ton of rebounds. He didn't have assists. There were possessions, I think, to end the first half, we went 5 straight possessions where he didn't touch the ball. I know that Scales and Eddie House were covering that at halftime. Like, what's going on? How does he not even touch the basketball? And that's when Indiana really cut into that lead. And, embarrassing to him in the first half is the Celtics really went on a lot of that run, or some of that run, with Brissett in the game. 20-0 run with Tatum not in the game when Tatum came in. That's when the wheels kind of came off. So, we talked about it, and we're saying he just has to show up in the second half. I know you wanted to see like championship level play, excellent Jason Tatum. And I was saying, I just want to see a guy put his head down and go to the basket and just get through this game doing some good things that can carry over. And I think that's what I saw in the second half. He came out, he had the first 2 assists in the second half to Jaylen Brown. I thought that was a good sign. Then he grabbed a couple of rebounds and got a dunk, and we were off and running. I thought he played really, really well after he grabbed that first defensive rebound and got into a rhythm with some passing, and he was just good to go at that point. His 3-point shot all playoffs hasn't been great, Jim. I don't know what's going on with his 3-point shot. I don't know if we're going to see it. But he's the type of guy, and you might disagree with me, he's the type of guy that if his 3-point shot's not falling, he can just put his head down and go. There aren't a lot of guys who can stop him from getting to the hoop. So if he can allow himself to just play, even when his three's not there, I think he's going to be okay, because the rest of the team can pick him up from 3. If you look at the stats last night, he was 1 for 7 from 3. If you take his 3-point shots away, the Celtics end up being 15 for 30 from the floor. So the rest of his teammates, I think they shot 50% combined last night, or close.
14 for 30, yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, so yeah. I feel like what we saw in the second half with him just going to the basket, like, I'd like to see more of that. I think he's a hard guy to stop at the rim, and he's finished a lot better at the rim this year than he has in years past. He's gone to the free throw line more this year than in years past. And honestly, I think Doris Burke was right. I think his lack of shooting, unfortunately, impacted the rest of his game, and it's the worst I've ever seen him play. So let's see what happens in Game 3.
Yeah, so him and Hauser combined was 1 for 11. Yeah, his first half, it was shocking to me how bad it was, and I just you hadn't seen that in a few years where um his offensive struggles really impacted everything. You could you look at like game one, for example, and I know he wasn't great in the fourth quarter, but the second and third quarter, he impacted the game in so many ways with his rebounding, being able to draw two and find the right guy, getting downhill, like you said, and attacking the basket, getting to the free throw line a ton, just doing a ton of things that would, slow down the game for the Celtics, give them, the edge that they needed at the time. He was a poor defender in that first half last night. I thought Indiana attacked him frequently with success in that first half. I thought he was a poor individual and team defender. He did not look engaged like you typically would see Jason Tatum look engaged. Now in the second half, he was much better. Obviously, he was much better. He hit the defensive glass in the third quarter. You mentioned his assist to Brown. He had a great little side pocket pass to Derek White for three. He attacked going downhill. He got into his fadeaway game, on the post quite a bit that half and hit, 4 or 5, I think, of those. I finally got to the line. He had no free throws in the first half. He had 4 in the second, including a couple and ones. So he was much better. I don't want to see that again. That should not happen with him. And I just feel like there's a level up here that he needs to hit. And maybe he thinks he needs to hit that level up. His shooting needs to get better. I will say this. So he can get by with not shooting well. They're going to need him to figure out his shot for them to win a title. He is going to have to make big, tough shots in the finals. For them to win it. And the thing that's concerning with the three right now is he got clean looks last night. These weren't, I know there's been a complaint with him on settling for threes, the sidestep threes, or the ISO threes. So there was one three where I thought when he got it going in the third quarter that he maybe forced it, but I didn't think it was a bad shot because he was failing it, and maybe it was an opportunity to get out of this slump. There were a lot of just open threes, and they were not back of the rim online misses. They were off quite a bit. And we've seen these funks with him before, and we've seen them last a while. And then all of a sudden he has one big game and he just completely snaps out of it. And he just goes on a run. We have not seen him shoot like this poorly in the playoffs before. And so we're running out of time for him to snap out of it. Like you said, hopefully it happens on the road. He has not hit more than 2 threes yet these entire playoffs, which is in one game, which is just kind of shocking in a lot of ways. He's got to be under 30% from 3 for the playoffs again, which is just a shocking number for a guy of his caliber. So yeah, he can get downhill and he can beat his man, and that's what he should be doing. They're going to need him to hit shots and make some threes for them to win this, I think. He has to shoot better. He has to shoot better at some point.
I'd like to see what his percentages are from the mid-range because I feel like he's not taking enough of them. I've said it before that they haven't been posting him up like they did in the regular season. And so in the first quarter last night, he shot right over the top of Nembhard. It was one of his two baskets that he made. He had a couple of those in the second half. I feel like maybe he needs to be taking more of the mid-range game, and those are the big shots that he can hit because in the NBA Finals too, when the game slows down, the mid-range is just as effective if he's hitting it, if he doesn't have his threes. So I could see some big shots there. He's not a great three-point shooter. I don't think he ever has been, but he's certainly not this bad. And I think he'll get out of this funk. There is no way he's going to shoot this poorly from 3 for the rest of the playoffs. But I do want to see more of his offensive game used. There are a lot of possessions where they start him off like in the corner, and then sometimes he doesn't even touch the ball. I don't think that's acceptable. And then when they do run plays for him, the top of the key pick and roll, that's a great play. I love that play for Tatum. But we can get a little bit more creative. We can have him coming off screens and posting up down low. And his matchups, especially in this series, if he were to post up, it's going to cause double teams. And Tatum's a great passer. He really is. He's one of the better passers on the team. I think the coach is going to help him a little bit. That's kind of where I'm at. Tatum's going to get through this and play better. But I also think we can be more creative on how we set him up offensively. He would dominate down there. And maybe it's we don't want to slow the game down and be, posting up Jason Tatum. But there are points in the series and points throughout this playoffs that I would.
Yeah, and I thought he attacked really well in game one. I thought him and Brown both attacked the basket pretty well in game one. I thought he did a better job in the second half in game two.
But it was all from the top of the key. It was all from the top of the key. Like there was nothing, and they did a good job. There was, I just feel like you could post him foul line extended. He's going to get to the free throw line more times than not.
Yeah, and you're probably right. I mean, his shooting woes are only from three right now. He's 18 for 31 from inside the line in this series, and he's 14 from 16 from the free throw line. So it's a strictly 3-point shot, and that's the thing that makes the first half even more maddening. And I know he was like a 2 for 8 in the first half. The shooting shouldn't affect everything else because there's other aspects of his offensive game that are fine. Like you mentioned, when we saw that a ton, what you were talking about in the second half of him getting to the foul line, extending, posted up, and going to that fadeaway, or just going right to the basket or getting to the free throw line. That's what made it so inexplicable. We've seen in the past, early in his career, where the 3-point shot would be lost and he couldn't finish at the rim. It was like a combination of the two. That's not the case here. That's why you watch that kind of engagement in the first half. It was surprising. Guys have this happen, but he needs to level up. He really does. He needs to level up, and we need to see just a consistent all NBA effort from minute 1 to minute 48 going forward. There's at most right now 9 games left. At most.
I don't want to. And I don't want to keep bringing up
it.
I don't want to keep bringing up LeBron James on this pod, but I think there's parts of his game from like the best, like early versions of LeBron winning with Miami and Cleveland that Tatum could bring into his game in these playoffs. LeBron was an efficient 3-point shooter because he took the open looks. But when he had guys up on him, when he was at his best during those championship runs, he was posting up and just driving to the basket over and over again. And Tatum doesn't have LeBron's body, but he's close. It's like the closest. He might be the closest in the playoffs to that kind of guy. I don't know of the remaining teams outside of Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards, if there are a lot of guys that can stop Tatum from getting there. Like Tatum, like moving forward now, can really dominate the paint. And if he does that, honestly, I think the Celtics can win with him going 2 for 8 from 3, 3 for 9 from 3. If he's dominating down there, the Celtics can win because they can just continue to go to that. And he's such a good passer that when they clog the lanes, he's surrounded by more shooters than anybody else in this series. The Celtics surround him with so many shooters, and Tatum's such a selfless player that when he's locked in, he finds them. So I agree with you, Jim. Like, he can't allow his 3-point misses to impact the rest of his game ever again. Like, level up and do other things. If he ended with 8 points in the first half last night and 6 rebounds and was playing tough defense, I don't think people would have been talking about Jason Tatum's not involved. The discussion would be like, oh, man, he's playing so hard. Where's his 3-point shot?
Yeah.
And that's different.
I thought the discourse around him for the playoffs was silly. he wasn't great at the end of the fourth quarter in game one, obviously, but I think for the whole, like his play has been good in these playoffs. Maybe it hasn't been superstar level, but they played kind of shit teams, and he gave the game
Yeah.
what it needed. It was fine. He wasn't a detriment in any way. He attacked double teams at a level that he really had never done in the past until this season. He was getting to the free throw line. The one disagreement I have with you, and I agree with most of what you're saying, and they can get by with him going 2 for 8 most nights. I do think he needs to find his shot for them to win this thing. There's just gonna be too many big moments down the stretch where he's gonna have an open look or open looks from 3 in fourth quarters that he has to start knocking down. And you miss those against Minnesota, or you miss those in a close game against a team with Kyrie and Luka, you're going to pay. You're going to pay in a severe way. He needs to match big shot for big shot eventually, and he needs to find it. So hopefully he does, because I hope to. Otherwise, I really hope I'm proven wrong and they win in spite of that. But I don't know if they can. I think he needs to find that either better percentage or hitting in the big moments, or hitting them in the big moments.
Yeah. And I think he'll find it if he doesn't press. He started pressing in the first quarter last night. I was texting you like, he's got an entire game left. Why is he already look like a deer in headlights? Like, what's happening with this guy? Like, he doesn't have to do the side step 3. He doesn't have to do it for the entire series against Indiana. That doesn't
I don't think he did that last night. That was the thing that was so kind of frightening about his shooting. They were like wide open looks, and he wasn't close.
Yeah, I think he's gonna hit I think he's gonna hit the wide open looks. I do. I think I got a question for you, Jim, because I don't know how severe Cornette's injury is. I do think it's concerning if it's severe, because the Celtics are pretty small now.
Yeah,
I don't.
small.
It doesn't impact them much against Indiana, but the next series it certainly would.
Yeah.
Joe Mazzulla the ESPN crew made some comments about Joe Mazzulla's reaction to Woj's report that KP's coming back for Game 4. Obviously, you've alluded to me off the show that Woj doesn't just come up with these things. Mazzulla is probably not sharing everything, but say KP isn't great, and say he comes back and he gets hurt again. Can they win without him?
It becomes really hard. You look at the size of both Dallas and Minnesota, and that becomes really daunting without KP, I think. I think they need him. They just need him to match their length and size and a threat at the rim. I think the fact that Woj came out with that report, he's not coming out on the pregame show before the Eastern Conference Finals with a report like that, unless he believes it's really, really solid. A reporter of his level. He doesn't need to just throw shit against the wall at this point in his career. And so my guess is he heard from someone within the organization, or he's hearing from KP's people, and they're telling him he's close. Now, what Mazzulla said to the broadcast team where he hasn't practiced with us yet, well, what does that mean? That means he's not part of your game plan and he's not running up and down the court yet. I get it. But does it mean he's close? And how many practices does he need, right? So maybe there's some gray area here. Maybe it's not Game 4 in Indiana. Maybe it's Game 5 or 6, or it's Game 1 or 2. But my guess is unless there was a setback, and there's been no reports of that, and I think if there was a setback, someone would give that to Woj to make sure he's covered fairly quickly. So he's not embarrassed. You don't want to have the national reporter embarrassed and pissed off at your team. So I'm guessing that he's on track. But it's a fair question. What does he look like? And I don't think Cornette ever returned to the bench last night, so that's not a real positive sign about his availability going forward. he was hit pretty hard by Siakam. And you're right, the depth there is not great. It's, Tillman and Keita, who's never played a playoff minute in his life. So it'd be interesting to
Might
see how
have
this
to.
thing shakes out. Yeah, he might have to. I don't think he has to in this series. I think he could go with Tillman and Brissett and be okay in this series.
Yeah.
And then you have some time between now and the finals. And that's the interesting thing, Mike. We should talk about Jaylen Brown before we go, but if they do wrap this up in 4 or even 5, they're going to have like a week off. The finals is set to start June 6th. So they could have a long time off before they play basketball with any anger again. And, you wonder if that's a good thing or if that's a bad thing. It feels like almost too much time to me to have off. But, it's almost, I hate to say it, there feels like there's a little bit of a disadvantage of finishing this thing too quickly. But that's
maybe a disadvantage for game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe a disadvantage for game 1, but I think an advantage for the Celtics overall because guys like Al, if
Correct.
KP's not back, he needs that. And if that's the recovery time to get Cornet back, they'll need those guys against these upcoming opponents because they are good inside. I mean, you got Derek Lively and you have Gafford over in Dallas waiting for you. Both have played at a really high level in this playoffs on both ends of the floor. And then, you're struggling with Miles Turner's 3-point shot. Well, get ready for Karl Anthony Towns and Naz Reid with those bigs and mixing in Gobert. So your bigs play a really, really important role in the NBA Finals. Those guys have to get healthy. Are hopefully Tillman's ready to go. I was surprised we didn't see any of him in this series so far. Well, obviously not game 1, but I hope we see a little bit more Tillman in Indiana to see what he got. He traded for this guy. Maybe if we got a double-digit lead, we can get him out there and just get him some run. I would like to see, what he can do out there in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, it'd be interesting if they use him or not. So, Mike, Jaylen Brown was left off All-NBA. He was left off of All-Defensive Team. Congratulations to Tatum, first team, and White and Holiday, second team, All-Defense. And you've seen how he played. I think he's definitely using this as a motivation. But just on the whole, we can talk about the snub if we want. We could talk about the All-NBA process, which I think tying incentives and having reporters vote on that, who reporters sometimes have agendas, is not the
They let
greatest thing in
Kendrick
the world.
Perkins vote on that. Kendrick Perkins gets to vote.
I know. There you go. And we're talking about huge money tied to this stuff. Brown.
That guy's a fucking moron.
He is. So, but on the whole, Jaylen Brown, I think this has been his best season by far in the NBA, and this has been his best playoffs. This is a different guy than we've seen in years past. And I don't know what your thoughts are, but just a much more controlled player than we've ever seen.
Jaylen Brown was snubbed from fucking both All-NBA and All-Defensive Team. Number one, why do you have 5 centers on your All-Defensive Team, like your first team? That is, are you kidding me right now? You're telling me that, Derek White and his shot blocking this year doesn't deserve to be, it's just crazy. I don't understand it. And Jaylen Brown, I've said it all season, I thought he's been a better defensive player than White and Holiday in the regular season. I thought that, especially in the second half. And when we talk about All-Star break to the end of the season, when you're talking about All-NBA, name me a more efficient scorer in the second half of the season than Jaylen Brown. He was 50% from 3. And he's still close to that now in the playoffs. He's been maybe their best player on the best team in the NBA, All-Star break to now.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And you left him off. Are we just staring at a stat sheet? Is that what we're doing? And we're voting off that? Did we see that Sabonis had some triple doubles? And not that Brown's competing against him, but
no, he is. It's positionless now.
Oh, it is positionless. So
yeah. He is.
Devin
Yeah.
Booker's not better than Jaylen Brown. He's just not. He's not a better player. Devin Booker's a good scorer, but he doesn't do the other things that Jaylen Brown does. Devin Booker doesn't do a good job covering the best player on the other team. He gets dominated by he was snubbed in my opinion, and I don't think I'm being a homer. I think it's just doesn't make sense.
No,
It is what it is.
I don't know how you can have two Lakers and two Suns and the team with the best record in the NBA by a wide margin get penalized for that, essentially, because they have a lot of good players. And Brown had the season that he had. And you're right about his defense. You know, he covered the best players, especially in the biggest moments on the other team over and over and over again this season. And you saw him last night late in the second half. He took on Siakam. So it really is maddening. But I think for us fans and the Celtics, I don't know. That seemed to be a little bit more out of incentive on how he's going to approach things. And so that's maybe not a terrible thing.
Yeah, and his post-game comments were pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I'm 2 games away from the NBA Finals. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, I know. It was pretty good. All right, so what do you expect, Mike? Let's close this out and then, maybe hit quickly on the Western Conference and we'll finish up the pod. So what are you expecting going back to Indiana? Is this coming back to Boston?
Yes, of course it is. The Celtics won by double digits. They're not going to show up in game 3. And then they'll have an amazing response in game 4 and do what they do to close out the series like the rest of the playoffs. Maybe they'll prove me wrong, Jim, but I just have no faith in the Celtics after they blow a team out. What are your thoughts?
Well, if there's no Halliburton, this isn't coming back to Boston.
Yeah, but don't you aren't you praying to the gods that he's playing so we don't have to hear this nonsense? Now, the Celtics have a railroad.
Yeah, it's never good that a guy gets hurt. So, I hope he's healthy. But I'm with you. I think this will probably come back for game 5. I think if Indiana loses game 3, it's over.
Yeah, of course.
I was so pleased last night with the approach they took, and maybe because game 1 was such a wake-up call, that's what brought it on. But, they finally came back and won a game 2 and didn't get complacent. I'm just hoping that, we see the same type of thing in game 3. Even if Indiana's going to get hot early, I think the first quarter, you're going to see your best version of Indiana. And I don't care if you get down 15-2. Don't stop playing. The game's not over. It's not out of reach. You showed what you could do defensively if you get physical with this team. Keep attacking. I don't care what the deficit is in that first quarter. I hope it's not that, because it is a tough mountain to climb at that point. But they just got to keep going and keep fighting and keep attacking and show something here. Show something that you're going to bring it every game now. There's not many games left. I think especially for Tatum, you should have motivation based off of, how your first half went in game 2. And maybe you take the lead on the road as being the big dog in providing what the Celtics need, right? So there's opportunity. There's reason for them to still play hard here. And they were the harder playing team in game 2. You're still the fresher team going to game 3. You're going to, at best, even if Halliburton plays, he's not going to be 100%. Attack him on defense, and you can win this. And that's what I want to see.
Cam, man, we all want to see that.
I know.
But you know exactly what's going to happen because they just blew a team out.
I don't want to say that.
Story for man, this has been their story forever.
I know, but it's so late in this thing now, and I just want them to have desperation because there's no guarantee next year. And you how many kicks at the can are they going to have at this thing? There's so much parity in the NBA. I get it, Mike, that there's been a pattern of behavior that I shouldn't be expecting anything else. But I think the stakes are so high for this team this season that I just want to. I'm holding out hope, I guess, that we're going to see something different.
All right, I have to get going. So my quick thoughts on the Western Conference are that I want to play Dallas. That's what I want. I want Kyrie Irving to come to Boston in the Kyrie Irving Love Fest around the NBA to come to Boston. It's quite the storyline, in my opinion, that the Celtics would have to overcome Kyrie Irving to win their first finals with this team.
Well,
But
it's just
I
a much
don't
better matchup for them too. It's it's night and day the matchup for the Celtics between
But
Minnesota and
I,
Dallas.
I think that Minnesota had some tired legs in game
Yeah.
one and still kept it close. So I still think Minnesota's the more talented team, but I got to be honest, Jim. I do feel like Kyrie Irving took those comments from Anthony Edwards
Sure.
personal, and he showed up, and he is a difference maker. When
Yes.
when these games slow down, him and Luka, I told you that I didn't feel like Minnesota had the guys to stay in front of Luka, and I still don't.
Maybe they don't.
I think they can switch him out of McDaniels and Edwards and get him on these bigs. I think the one thing going for Minnesota is they're a better 3-point shooting team. And I think they outshot Dallas by 39 points in game one. So that's really concerning for Dallas, but I do give Dallas a shot. I think Dallas has a chance here. I wouldn't count
They
them out.
absolutely have. They won game one. They have a real shot to win this series. It's not the worst matchup in the world for them. I think they can attack Rudy Gobert in that drop coverage all day, every game, like they did get into. I mean, look at how easily Kyrie got to the basket. As good as Rudy Gobert is defensively, we've seen it in the playoffs before, him get exposed. Different series than what he had to face against Denver, where there wasn't a ton of penetrating guards or penetrating players. So Dallas has got a shot. There's no doubt about it. Dallas is just when you look at matchups for the Celtics, it's just a much better matchup for the Celtics. You saw what Jaylen Brown did 2 games this season against Luka in crunch time.
6,000.
Oh, no. Motherfucker.
Restrictions apply. Because Comcast Business 1.2.
What happened there?
Sorry.
You went the wrong way?
My Bluetooth turned off, Jim. Why don't you close out the pod without
All right,
me to
guys.
edit this out?
Mikey's wrestling with his car, doesn't know how to get to work, and hopefully the Celtics have better luck on their road to the finals than Mikey is on his daily commute. All right, we'll talk to everyone soon.
All right, Jim. Next pod, try to memorize the plays again. You'll do a better job.